Hey y'all, it's Jake. How we doing? So, for no particular reason this week, I was inspired to build a self-defense shield, aka a riot shield, as cheaply as I possibly could. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be referring to it as a snowball shield, because if you've ever been in a snowball fight, you know that sometimes they can get pretty dangerous and there's a lot of projectiles flying around. When I was thinking about how to approach this, there were a couple things on my mind. First, it needs to be cheap. I want this thing to be accessible and replicable regardless of where you are, using materials you can probably find around. Second, it needs to be lightweight. If you've ever been to a snowball fight before, especially on the front lines, you know things can escalate kind of quickly. Sometimes you're just hanging out with your friends, peacefully, chanting, in a snowy valley, when suddenly someone throws a snowball at you that might be made of rubber. You also might be out there for a long time and you want to be able to move around. The third and probably most important component is it needs to be durable. While I'm confident this thing will stop hand-thrown snowballs, I wasn't sure if it would be able to resist a smaller ping-pong ball-sized rubber snowball. But regardless, I had some things I wanted to try out, so you guys are going to come along on the ride. Now, I've been talking a lot, haven't really caught you guys up on what's happening here. I started with a jug of wood glue that I've had sitting around for a long time, and I mixed it with a little bit of water just to thin it out. Next, I went through and started painting it on some cardboard boxes, then layering those up until I had about 4 stacked together. I worked in smaller sections, one side at a time, just to make sure the glue wouldn't dry before I could attach the cardboard to it. A great alternative to wood glue would be construction adhesive, but this is what I had, so I'm just going to try it. Once all 4 layers were down, I stacked up some wood on top to compress it together, and I gave it about an hour to cure. Wood glue works by soaking into the pores of the wood and then hardening, so I figured this would work with cardboard too, because it's also porous. And I was pretty happy with how it turned out. It was rigid and held its shape fairly well. But this was only the first step. This layer is going to provide a lightweight superstructure that we can add more durability to, but first we need to trim off the excess and get the shape of our snowball shield locked in. I ended up going with a rectangle about 2 feet by 4 feet. That felt big enough for me to crouch down and hide behind if there was a snowball barrage happening, but also not so big that it would be cumbersome to move around with. The shiny surface that you see on the cardboard is actually a layer of fiberglass resin. Before the wood glue, I attempted to layer up the cardboard with just fiberglass, but really quickly I realized that I would need a ton of resin to do that, and it was just way out of my budget. So I'm reusing one of the pieces that already had 1 layer of resin cured on it as the front face of my shield. You can get this stuff at hardware stores. It's used for making exterior boat and car repairs. It's impact resistant and super durable. You can get enough to make this shield for about 30 bucks. Next, I'm going to add this fiberglass blanket that was about $8. It comes in a 2 foot by 4 foot rectangle. It's also used for car repairs, and I'm hoping it'll provide more tensile strength, as well as providing a better surface for the resin to bond. This resin tends to cure really quickly. Once you have it all mixed up, there's only about 8 to 10 minutes of working time. So because of that, I went in smaller sections when attaching the blanket instead of doing it all at once. For the final touch, I dropped 1 more cup of resin over the top of the blanket and smeared it around until it was pretty thick across the entire surface. If I added more layers of fiberglass blanket and resin, this would definitely become much more durable, but I don't want to spend too much money right now. I just want to see how this is going to work. After about 3 hours of cure time, I came back and the resin was stiff and tacky, kind of like when you try to make caramel with sugar, and then you go to clean the pot afterwards and it's formed this impenetrable barrier that is impossible to get clean. Because of that, the sides were a little sharp and jagged, so I started covering the entire perimeter with duct tape. I'm hoping that this not only will protect my hands when I pick it up, but also act as another layer of adhesive to keep the cardboard from falling apart. All I had was this cheap duct tape, but I think this can be improved upon by using a thicker, like Gorilla Tape or similar. To make sure I got full coverage around each side, I flipped it over and did another layer on the back. When I've seen other people make snowball shields, they always include a little eye hole so that you can see what's going on if you're crouched down behind it. I wasn't sure how I felt about this idea. What if a snowball comes through straight into that hole and nails me in the face? But it's also a good idea at snowball fights to wear eye and face protection, so I figured we might as well try it out and see how it feels. I wasn't confident that the fiberglass alone was going to be enough to stop a really fast snowball, so I thought I'd add some of this steel mesh that I had lying around. To make sure it was compressed and held in place, and also provide more rigidity to the shield, I added some of these wooden 1x2s that I cut out. The two on the front are adding vertical stability to make sure that the shield doesn't fold over if it gets hit, and on the back there's 4 horizontal ones to add another layer of strength. I attached them using screws by going through the front wood into the back wood, compressing the cardboard between. The downside of adding the wood was immediately I noticed the shield felt a lot heavier. I want to say it was around 8 or 10 pounds, which feels like a lot if you're going to be carrying it all day. Not to mention if you need to make some quick moves into a different area. So if you guys have any ideas of a material I might be able to use that's better, let me know in the comments because I'm kind of stumped. Now I just need a place to put a handle, so I'm attaching this brace and then using these little weird metal things that I have in my shop. This is very much just a prototype. If I was going to carry this all day, these handles would suck. But for now, they're good enough for me to at least test it out and see how it feels. Overall, I was pretty happy with the size and shape. It was a little heavy, but I felt pretty safe when I crouched down behind it and like my body was mostly covered. But now it was time to find out if all this work was a waste or if I actually had something that might work. I mean, what's the point of carrying around a shield if it's not going to protect you and your friends from danger? Unfortunately, nobody I know regularly uses rubber snowballs, so the best I can do for now is throw some shit at this as hard as I can and see what happens. Okay, it didn't break on the first hit. That's a good sign. But a log is a lot different than a rock, so let's try that. At this point, I was actually feeling pretty confident. I'm no baseball pitcher, but I can throw me a rock. The fiberglass was holding up really well against the rocks I was throwing at it. And I didn't see any damage on the back. Nothing seemed to be breaking its way through. That was until I landed a rock square on that middle brace, and it completely snapped it in half. So the wood 1x2s, though they were easy, probably not the move. But overall, I was impressed at how well the resin was handling all that punishment. And on the back, despite that central brace breaking, everything else looked to be in pretty good working order. While I like the steel mesh because it provides a puncture-resistant layer, I was a little unimpressed at how quickly it started to break when it was hit with projectiles. I'm planning to make another prototype that is just the fiberglass layer and see how well that one does. But if you guys can think of any ways to improve on this and make it easier for the average person to make, let me know. And if you find yourself in any snowball fights this weekend, be careful, take care of each other, and remember it's our right to be out there. Dirtbag America out.